My dying grandfather gave me $100,000 to finish school. My parents tried to steal it, sued me, stalked me, and when that didn't work, they broke into my apartment. All because I refused to let them control me one last time. I never thought my life would take a turn like this. If you told me 2 years ago that my parents, the people who raised me, would try to shake me down for $100,000, I would have laughed in your face. I'm not some billionaire's kid. I'm a 25-year-old mechanical engineering student from Michigan, just trying to make it through school, pay my bills, and maybe, just maybe, build something for myself that resembles a future. But this wasn't the future I saw coming. It all started with my grandfather. His name was John Raymond Whitaker. My mom's dad. To me, he was Grandpa Ray. He was the quiet type, but he had this dry, biting sense of humor that only people who really knew him could appreciate. He was the kind of man who didn't talk a lot, but when he did, people listened. I was his only grandkid. My mom was an only child and didn't have me until her late 30s, so by the time I hit high school, Grandpa was in his 80s but still sharp as ever. We'd sit on his back porch in the summers, just drinking iced tea and talking about nothing and everything. He was a World War II vet, a mechanical engineer by trade, and had a workshop behind his house that was basically a time capsule of mid-century innovation. He used to tell me stories about building things from nothing. About how in the 50s and 60s he'd take apart lawnmowers, radios, even his neighbors' busted-up TVs just to figure out how they worked. I think that's where my own obsession started. When I was 12, he handed me my first soldering iron and said, "Figure it out, kiddo. Worst you can do is burn your fingers." I did. I burned myself a lot that summer. But I also built my first working FM radio by the end of it. That was the first time I remember feeling proud of something I made with my own hands. Fast forward to my senior year of high school, my mom drops the bomb. Grandpa Ray had terminal pancreatic cancer. I remember how numb I felt. He didn't tell me himself. I think he was trying to spare me the pain, but that made it worse somehow. When I visited him after the diagnosis, he didn't say much about it. Just kept things normal. Gave me some old tools from his workshop. Told me to never stop building things, even if the world didn't think it was worth anything. That was the last time I saw him before the hospital stay. He passed 2 months later. His funeral was small. Intimate. The kind of thing he would have wanted. No long speeches, no dramatic eulogies. Just people who loved him standing around sharing stories, crying in that quiet, respectful way people do when they feel like they're not allowed to fall apart publicly. I kept it together until I got back to my apartment and found a little envelope stuck inside the back of one of his toolboxes. My name was written on it in his handwriting. Inside was a short letter and a check. The letter said, "You always had the hands of a builder and the brain of an engineer. I know how expensive school is, and I didn't want you to start life buried in debt. This is my final gift to you. Make it count." The check was for $100,000. It felt like winning the lottery. I mean, I'd been scraping by on part-time work, student loans, and one small scholarship I got from the state. I was one of those people who chose community college for 2 years just to save on tuition. Suddenly, I had a chance to finish my degree without the crushing debt. I could breathe again. I called my mom to tell her about it. That was my first mistake. There was this pause on the line. A kind of stunned silence. Then she said, "He left you money?" "Yeah," I said. $100,000. For school. More silence. "That's generous," she finally said, but her tone was off. Tight. Controlled. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought maybe she was just emotional. It had only been a week since we buried him. I mean, yeah, $100,000 is a big deal, but I didn't think she'd be anything but happy for me. Grandpa Ray was her father. Why wouldn't she be proud that he was still helping his grandson even after he was gone? I should have seen the warning signs. The first hint that something was up came a month later when I went home to visit. My parents live about 2 hours north of where I go to school. It was my mom, my dad, and me at the dinner table, and they were both weirdly on edge all night. My dad barely looked at me. My mom kept dropping not-so-subtle hints. "You know, your father and I have been really struggling to keep the house afloat with inflation and your college expenses," she said at one point. I blinked. "My college expenses?" "Well, all the years we supported you, food, clothes, sports, school trips, you wouldn't be where you are without us." I just nodded politely and changed the subject. But it stuck in my head. Especially the way they kept circling around the topic of Grandpa Ray's money without ever saying it outright. The confrontation finally happened the following weekend. I got a call from my dad asking me to come home again. He said they needed to have a serious conversation. That's never a good sign. When I got there, they sat me down in the living room like I was about to be grounded. My mom opened with, "Your grandfather's money was part of the family estate." I said, "It was a personal check he left in a letter to me." Dad cut in. "That doesn't matter. Legally, we should have had oversight. And morally, you need to understand that this money would have helped the whole family, not just you." I was stunned. "He left it to me for college. Specifically." Mom's voice got shrill. "Do you know how much we've sacrificed for you? That was our father. He should have talked to us first. We could have used that money to finally pay off the mortgage, maybe fix up the house." Then came the kicker. "We expect you to contribute $100,000 to the household. We know how much he left you." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "You want me to give you the full amount he left me? For my education?" They didn't laugh back. My dad said coldly, "You wouldn't have even gotten to college if it weren't for us raising you. It's time to return the favor." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were the same people who'd always preached about self-reliance and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. The same people who used to mock handouts and get visibly angry when they heard about kids expecting their parents to pay their way through life. And now they were demanding a six-figure payout from their own son? That night ended badly. I refused. Flat out. Told them that Grandpa gave me that money for a reason, and I wasn't going to betray his memory by giving it away to anyone else. My mom cried. My dad yelled. I walked out. They didn't talk to me for 2 months. But it didn't end there. Oh no. That was just the start. Because soon, they'd come up with another plan, one that would go far beyond guilt trips and passive-aggressive phone calls. One that would threaten to turn the entire family against me. All because of money that was never theirs to begin with. And looking back, I should have known better than to think they'd let it go. The silence from my parents was louder than any argument we'd ever had. 2 months went by with no calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive holiday cards. Nothing. It should have felt peaceful, but instead, it was just eerie. Like I was waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I knew, deep down, that it would. The call came on a Sunday afternoon in January. It wasn't my mom or dad. It was my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister. "Hey, sweetie," she said in that voice people use when they're pretending everything's fine, but you know it isn't. "Can we talk for a sec?" I stepped outside my apartment, standing in the freezing cold with my phone to my ear. "Sure. What's up?" "I've been hearing some things. About you. From your mom." Here it was. I didn't even ask what things. I already knew. She said you've been keeping money from the family. That Grandpa Ray left something behind, and you refused to share. That you've been disrespectful, cruel even. I let out a breath and sat on the edge of the steps outside. "Did she mention what that money was for?" Aunt Linda paused. "She said he left you a check, but they thought it was for all of you. Like a family contribution." "No. It wasn't. It was a scholarship. A personal letter and a check, written in his own handwriting. I didn't take anything from them. It wasn't in his will, it was a private gift. For school. Do you still have the letter?" "Yes." "Good," she said quickly. "Keep it safe. Maybe even make copies." That surprised me. I thought for sure she was calling to scold me. But then she added, "You know how your mother gets when she feels entitled to something." We ended the call on good terms. She said she was going to try to talk some sense into my mom. But within days, I knew that hadn't gone anywhere. Because that's when the smear campaign really began. It started with cousins unfriending me on social media. Then the cryptic posts. Vague Facebook updates from my mom like, "Some children forget who raised them. Money shows who people really are." Then came the texts from my Uncle Dean, who's basically my dad's mouthpiece whenever there's family drama. He texted me something like, "Not cool, man. Your dad is heartbroken. You owe him better than this." I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy. I wasn't raised in a warm, fuzzy household. My dad was old school, strict, my roof, my rules kind of guy. He always reminded me that nothing came free. But that was the thing, the money from Grandpa Ray was free. A gift. Unconditional. That was probably what pissed my dad off the most, he wasn't in control of it. A week later, I got an email. From a lawyer. At first, I thought it was spam. But it had a legitimate firm's name and logo, and after some quick Googling, I realized it was real. The message read, We are contacting you on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. last name regarding the distribution of assets belonging to the estate of John Raymond Whittaker. I almost dropped my laptop. What followed was legalese basically accusing me of withholding inheritance funds and failure to disclose financial gifts obtained from a family estate. They were threatening to take me to court if I didn't amicably resolve the matter by paying a fair share of the inheritance to the claimants. It was unreal. I called the firm immediately, asked who exactly had retained them. My parents. Of course. I calmly told the receptionist that the money wasn't part of Grandpa's estate, that it was a personal check with a letter attached, and that I had evidence. She took down my information and said someone would call me back. I didn't wait. I called my own lawyer, well, technically a legal aid rep from my university, but she was good. After looking over everything, she said what I hoped she would: they have no case. This wasn't in the will. It was a private, documented gift. They're bluffing. Still, I was shaken. I didn't want to be sued by my own parents. I didn't want my name dragged through legal mud. But mostly, I couldn't believe they'd gone this far. They didn't call me. They didn't even try to talk. They went straight to a law office. I blocked my parents' numbers that day. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But it wasn't. Because their next move was something I never saw coming. I came home from class one Thursday to find a note taped to my door. Not an envelope. A single sheet of printer paper. Typed. No signature. You are being incredibly selfish. Grandpa would be ashamed. Families help each other, and you've done nothing but show how greedy you are. That money should have gone to support all of us. Not just you. You will regret this. I checked the building security footage through the leasing office. They were hesitant at first, but once I explained the situation and showed them the note, they let me watch. I saw my father walk up the steps, put the note on the door, and leave. It was surreal. My dad. A man who once taught me how to ride a bike, who yelled at me for swearing when I was 13, who used to bring me donuts on Saturday mornings, now he was sneaking around like some bitter ex-boyfriend taping notes to my door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down on my bed and stared at the wall for a long time. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about power. They didn't care that the money was mine. They cared that I had it, and they didn't. That I had control, and they didn't. That I had a future that wasn't chained to them anymore. That weekend, I got a message from my cousin Leah. We'd always been close. She was one of the few family members I thought had stayed neutral. Her message simply said, "Hey." I didn't want to believe what they were saying. "Can I ask you something?" We ended up talking on the phone for over an hour. She told me my mom had been telling everyone that Grandpa Ray left me $250,000. That I'd blown it all on vacations and electronics. That I'd refused to help them pay for Grandma's medical bills. Wait, what? Grandma's medical bills? Leah paused. You didn't know? No. I didn't. Because no one had told me. Because they blocked me out. I asked her how Grandma was doing. She said, honestly, not great. But stable. That hit hard. I'd been so wrapped up in all this legal and emotional mess that I hadn't even realized how far they'd pushed me out of the loop. It was a wake-up call. Not because I regretted keeping the money, it was mine, and I still needed it to finish school. But because I realized I couldn't go back. There was no fixing this. Not without losing myself in the process. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my submission. My silence. My obedience. I decided I wasn't going to give them any of those things. Instead, I started gathering my evidence. The letter. The check copy. The email from their lawyer. The note on the door. The security footage. And then I posted it. Not out of spite, but because I was tired of being called greedy behind closed doors. I made one post. Just one. On Facebook. I explained everything as simply and clearly as I could. I included a blurred image of the letter, with the dollar amount visible, a redacted screenshot of the legal email, and a short message. My grandfather gave me a gift so I could finish school. My parents have tried to take it from me. I never wanted to make this public, but I can't sit back while lies are being spread about me. If you've heard anything about me stealing from the family, I hope this clears it up. I didn't name names. I didn't trash anyone. I just told the truth. And then I logged off. The fallout, I later learned, was nuclear. I didn't check my phone for 2 full days after I made that post. It sounds small, but for me, it was huge. I'm not someone who thrives on attention. I'd always been the quiet one at family gatherings, the good kid who kept his head down and didn't rock the boat. But that post? That was the equivalent of flipping the entire table over. When I finally turned my phone back on, the notifications were endless. Messages, missed calls, DMs, even voicemails, some from people I hadn't heard from in years. And it was about what you'd expect. A mix of everything. Some were supportive. I had no idea, man. I'm sorry for how they treated you. That letter made me tear up. Your grandpa clearly loved you so much. Good for you for standing up for yourself. Others, not so much. This should have stayed private. You humiliated your parents. Wow. You really want the whole world to know how greedy you are? You owe your family more than this. Shame on you. And then there were the comments from family members I barely knew, third cousins once removed, people I hadn't seen since I was in middle school, suddenly weighing in like they were experts on the situation. The worst one came from my dad's younger brother, Uncle Kevin. You think you're a man because you posted some screenshots. Your dad worked his ass off for you. You just spat in his face. Hope that money keeps you warm at night, because you're not welcome at our table anymore. That stung. Not because I cared about his opinion, but because it confirmed something I'd suspected since I was a teenager. That side of the family never really saw me as one of them. I was always just the quiet kid with the book in the corner. But you know what? For every ugly message, there were 5 more that made me feel like I hadn't lost everything. People came out of the woodwork, distant relatives, old teachers, even 2 of Grandpa Ray's old co-workers who found the post through mutual friends. They all said the same thing. He would be proud of you. And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. Still, it wasn't all digital drama. Real-world consequences hit fast and hard. The next time I went to visit my favorite coffee shop near campus, the barista, a girl named Nia I'd talked to a few times, handed me my drink and said, "Hey, I saw your post." That took guts. I don't know you well, but I'm rooting for you. That was nice. But it also confirmed something else. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was out there. People knew. I started getting paranoid. I'd catch people looking at me in class, whispering. Not in a bullying way, more like curious stares. I guess that's what happens when your family drama becomes semi-viral in your small college town. Everyone's looking for the next scandal. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of a photo of me, around 7 years old, sitting on Grandpa Ray's lap, holding a homemade wooden airplane. On the back, someone had written in ballpoint pen. "You earned it. Don't let them take it." There was no signature, but I'm almost certain it was from Aunt Linda. I didn't cry, but I came close. That same night, I got a phone call from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, Grandma. Now, my grandmother, Grandpa Ray's wife, is a whole story in herself. She and I were never that close growing up. She was quieter than he was, kind of detached, always knitting in the background while everyone else talked. But she was smart. And sharper than people gave her credit for. When I answered the phone, I expected anger. Maybe even disappointment. But what I got was something else. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice calm and slow. "Yes," I said. "You have the letter?" "I do." "Good," she said. "John always said you were the only one who ever listened." There was a pause. "I want to see it." So that weekend, I drove the 2 hours home. For the first time since everything started, I went back to the town I'd grown up in. I didn't tell my parents I was coming. I went straight to Grandma's condo, just off the main road behind a tiny grocery store. She opened the door in her cardigan and slippers, looked me up and down like she was measuring how much I'd aged. Then she let me in without a word. I sat at her dining room table, pulled the letter from the folder I'd been keeping it in, and slid it across to her. She read it twice. Didn't blink. Didn't smile. Just nodded slowly. "That's his handwriting." "Yes." "He didn't tell me," she murmured. I wasn't sure what to say. I didn't think she'd be hurt by that, but she looked sad. Not angry. Just quiet. "He knew how your mother would react," she said finally. "That's why he didn't tell anyone. Not even me." I hesitated, then asked, Why are they like this? Why do they think they're entitled to everything?" She set the letter down and folded her hands. "Because they never built anything of their own." "Not really. Your mother married your father and gave up her independence. Your father followed his father's footsteps and stayed in a job he hated just to look respectable. And when they saw you doing something different, succeeding without their control, they panicked. They couldn't stand the idea of you having something they didn't. That hit me harder than I expected. It made sense. Too much sense. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner, Grandma added. I didn't know. But I want you to know. I'm proud of you too. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't a tearful embrace. But coming from her, it meant everything. We talked for a while longer. She told me stories I'd never heard before, about Grandpa Ray as a young man, about how he built his first prototype radio from scratch, how he once lost a college scholarship himself because his parents took the money and used it to pay off a mortgage. He never got over that, she said. Maybe that's why he gave it to you the way he did. I left that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a while, peace. But peace, unfortunately, doesn't last long in my world. Because a week later, I got a certified letter from my parents' lawyer. It read, "Due to the damage caused by your public disclosure of sensitive family matters, we are formally requesting a retraction and public apology. Failure to do so may result in a defamation suit." I laughed when I read it. Like, full-on cackled. A defamation suit? For telling the truth? I called my school legal aid rep again. She was just as unimpressed. They don't have a leg to stand on, she told me. And if they do try anything, we'll file a counterclaim for harassment and attempted fraud. So I didn't retract anything. In fact, I posted an update. My parents have now threatened to sue me for defamation. For posting a letter my grandfather wrote me personally, and for explaining the truth about what's been happening. I stand by everything I said. And I have nothing to apologize for. I knew what I was doing. I knew this might push them over the edge. But what I didn't know was just how far they were willing to go next. I guess I should have expected it. When you take control back from people who only loved you when you were under their thumb, they don't just give up. They escalate. They corner. They go nuclear. About 2 weeks after I posted my "I'm not apologizing" update, everything started going quiet again. Too quiet. No texts, no calls, no messages from the lawyer. At first, I thought maybe they'd finally given up. Maybe the public embarrassment had worn them out. Maybe they were regrouping and realizing they looked ridiculous. But now, they were just getting creative. It started when I went home one night and saw that my mailbox had been opened. Not broken into, just opened and left hanging there, door wide open, contents gone. Weird, right? I didn't even think much of it until the third time it happened. Then the fifth. I went to the post office and asked if someone else had filed a change of address form. Turns out, yes, someone had. To their house. I couldn't believe it. My parents had fraudulently redirected my mail. I filed a report immediately, both with the USPS and local police. The woman at the post office said it was illegal, mail fraud, and I could absolutely press charges. I didn't. Not yet. I just wanted my mail back and to put a stop to it. But it told me something, they weren't done. They were trying to see if they could find something in my mail to use against me. Some account info, financial statement, anything to support their wild claim that I'd stolen from them. Then came the worst part. They showed up at my school. I was in the middle of my fluid mechanics lab when the department secretary knocked on the door and asked me to step out. I figured maybe something with my financial aid, or worse, something with my GPA. But no. It was my parents. In the main office. Standing there like they owned the place. My dad in his work polo and slacks, my mom with her arms crossed and a look on her face like she was about to scold a child for coloring on the walls. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not even trying to be polite. "We need to talk," my dad said. "Now." I looked over at the secretary, who looked uncomfortable. I turned back and said, "No. You need to leave." "We're not going anywhere," Mom snapped. "Not until we settle this like a family." That word again, family, like it was a spell they could cast to make me forget everything. "You tried to sue me," I said, my voice low and steady. "You've been stalking me. Tampering with my mail. You are not my family anymore." That got her. She gasped like I'd slapped her. But I didn't care. I meant every word. Security was called. Not because I made a scene, but because I told the staff they were harassing me. The security guards were sympathetic, one of them even said, "You want to file a restraining order? Because you've got a case." I didn't go that far. Not yet. But I did give the school a heads up, filed an incident report, and added a note to my student file that they were not to be given any information about me. That night, I got the email. It was from a shared family account I hadn't seen since I was 16. It said, "If you continue this path, we will escalate. We know where you live. We know where you work. And we know your graduation depends on financial stability. This is your last chance to do what's right. That's when I called a lawyer. A real one. I cashed out a chunk of my scholarship and paid for a consult. He didn't mince words. This is harassment. It's a pattern of intimidation. And if they step foot on your property or send one more threatening message, we file a restraining order. Immediately. So I got all my ducks in a row. Screenshots. Letters. Post office reports. Even the footage from the school hallway security camera. All in a nice, clean folder labeled CYA. I also installed cameras at my apartment. A Ring doorbell. Motion sensors. The works. Because something told me this wasn't over. And I was right. 2 nights later, I came home late from studying to find my apartment door slightly open. My stomach dropped. I didn't go inside. I called 911 from my car and waited. When the cops got there and went in first, they found the place ransacked. Drawers pulled open. Files tossed around. My laptop gone. My safe, hidden under the bed, pried open. I'd never felt more violated. I didn't need proof. I knew it was them. But what I didn't expect was what the cops found in the living room. A photo. A single printed 8x10, face up on the coffee table. It was me, Grandpa Ray, and a much younger version of my mom, maybe 25, back when she still smiled without looking like she was plotting something. The photo was taken in his old workshop. We were all laughing. On the back, scrawled in ink. Family is supposed to share. I wanted to scream. To rip the photo in half. To cry. But instead, I handed it to the officer and said, "This is it. We're pressing charges." And I did. Breaking and entering. Theft. Harassment. Attempted mail fraud. They were served the next morning. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, signing those papers. Going to the precinct. Sitting across from the detective and explaining how my own parents had become my stalkers. How they'd gone from being neglectful to manipulative to dangerous. I wanted it to be over. So badly. But part of me knew it still wasn't. Because when you expose people like that, when you pull the mask off and show the world what they really are, they don't disappear quietly. They lash out. And they bring hell with them. The next move they made? It would take the last bit of family I thought I still had and turn them against me. I didn't hear from my parents for nearly 2 weeks after they were served. Not a text. Not a call. Not a single knock on my door. I should have felt relief. Maybe even victory. But all I felt was tired. Like I'd just walked through a forest fire and finally made it to the other side, only to find the air still thick with smoke. The police took my report seriously. They recovered my laptop 2 towns over, at a pawn shop where it had been sold under my dad's name. Case closed, basically. But the process wasn't fast. The charges were filed. The court dates were scheduled. My lawyer was confident, though especially with the trail of messages, letters, and that final, unhinged photo. Still, what really broke me wasn't anything legal. It was my grandmother. One rainy Tuesday morning, I got a message from my Aunt Linda, "Call me when you can." It's about Grandma. My stomach dropped. She'd had a stroke. Minor, but still serious enough to hospitalize her. I dropped everything and drove straight home. When I got there, Linda met me in the hallway with a hug I wasn't expecting. The kind that lasts a few seconds too long and says more than words could. "She's okay," she said. "But she's asking for you." I walked into the room, and there she was, frail, pale, smaller than I remembered. Her hands trembled when she reached for mine. "I didn't want this," she said quietly. "I didn't want any of this." "I know," I told her. "And I meant it. They said you betrayed them. That you were greedy. But I saw the evidence. I saw it all. And you were right." I didn't say anything. I just held her hand. "They came to me," she continued. "Your mother and father. A few days ago. They said they'd drop everything, apologize, even if I gave them control of my estate. If I agreed to cut you out." I looked at her, stunned. "What?" She nodded. "They said you'd poisoned the family. That you were unstable. Dangerous. That I couldn't trust you." I felt something inside me snap, but not in anger. In grief. "I told them no," she said. "And your mother," she called me pathetic. "Said I was senile." Then she left and told the nurse I wasn't to have visitors without her approval. I swallowed hard. My own mother was trying to isolate her. Control her. I'm changing my will, Grandma said. Not because I want to hurt anyone, but because I want to make sure you're protected. What your grandfather left you was never just about money. It was about freedom. And they hate that you have it. I didn't even know how to respond. I just nodded and sat there beside her, silently, as the rain tapped against the hospital windows. But I didn't get long. Later that night, as I was getting ready to leave, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered out of instinct. Enjoy the money, traitor. My mother's voice. Ice cold. She hung up before I could respond. The next day, I got another email from the same family Gmail account. Just one sentence. When Grandma dies, don't bother coming to the funeral. That was it. The final nail. I showed the message to my lawyer. We added it to the file. She nodded and said, this actually helps your case. Shows a continued pattern of harassment. But honestly, I didn't care about the case anymore. I'd won. Technically. The money was mine. The charges were moving forward. I had Grandma's support. And yet, the win felt hollow. What I'd lost couldn't be measured in dollars. I lost the illusion of family. I lost the idea that maybe, just maybe, things could be repaired. That there was some version of my parents I could eventually make peace with. But after months of being treated like an ATM, a punching bag, and finally, a threat? No. There was no going back. The court date came and went. My father pleaded out. Took a deal, community service, a fine, and mandatory counseling. My mother walked away clean, legally speaking, but not reputationally. After it became public knowledge what they'd done, even their flying monkeys started turning on them. My dad lost his job within 3 months. Not because I said anything, but because apparently stealing from your own son and getting caught on a pawn shop camera doesn't look great when you work in procurement. Karma's funny like that. As for me, I graduated 6 months later, debt-free. Top 10% of my class. The final check Grandpa Ray gave me got me through tuition, books, food, rent, and enough left over to buy a reliable used car. My first real job was in Detroit, junior engineer for a company working on sustainable machinery. I moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I hung the photo, that photo, from the break-in, in a frame on my wall. Not to remember the message, but to remember the moment. The moment I stopped letting people decide what I deserved. Grandma passed away a year later. Peacefully, in her sleep. I got to be there with her. I held her hand as she went. She left me a letter. Short. Simple. They will always try to take what you build. But you keep building anyway. That letter is in a drawer next to Grandpa's. I never went to her funeral. Not because I wasn't welcome, but because I knew what it would be, fake condolences, whispered bitterness, and forced grief. I held my own little memorial for her. Just me, a candle, and the smell of her favorite cinnamon tea. Sometimes I wonder if my parents regret it. If there's even a sliver of guilt left in them. But that's not my weight to carry anymore. I stopped checking their social media. Stopped asking around. Let it all go. I still get emails from extended family sometimes. Some apologizing. Some just checking in. Some trying to stir things back up. But I don't engage. Because I've learned something I wish I knew a long time ago. Family isn't who raises you. It's who respects you. And if the people who raised you never did, you don't owe them anything, not your money, not your time, not your forgiveness. Just your silence. And peace. Which, finally, I have.